I'd make a video of the top 5 things never to say to someone who's going through rejection. I was inspired to make this video because I just think a lot of the advice around this topic is really bad and given by people who sound like they live in this la fantasy land that I have never encountered. So this is only based on my experience, but hopefully it will be somewhat realistic. I happened to come up with exactly 5 phrases to avoid and also some bonus different things you can say or different approaches you can take that will hopefully be more constructive if you actually want to help your friend who's going through a hard time. This is more geared towards friendships and general social situations, although I think most of these things would also apply to romance, although I think that there's just more of a playbook for comforting people who are going through breakups, and so this subject is treated with a little bit more empathy in general. It's also my expectation that this will apply a little bit more to women than to men. That's just because I've never been a man, and I think they're a little bit more straightforward in how they interact with each other. So maybe they still go through a lot of the same issues, but it's more cut and dry and it's more on the surface. If someone is going on about how they're feeling lonely, they're feeling left out, they feel like they're not important to their other friends, and they're kind of complaining about that to you, the first thing that you will probably really want to say to make them feel better, that you should not say, is, "They're probably just busy." And there's a couple reasons why this is actually not helpful in that situation. One, is your friend who's complaining not busy? Do they not have things going on in their life? Are they just like this sad, lonely person? I just have so much time and no one else does because they're actually out there living their life, doing important things. Like it's so patronizing, right? What is the implication? Like, I know people don't think about it, but I mean, maybe they should. Maybe they should think a little bit. Yes, just do not say that because you're probably just going to make them feel worse. But there's another reason why this is advice that can really backfire and make someone feel worse. And that is because we have social media now. So we know what people are doing when they're not around us. When you say like, "Oh, she probably doesn't it's not on purpose. She's probably just so busy with work. She doesn't have any time to socialize or relax or do anything. It's probably just chaos over there." And the person you're talking to may be like scrolling through their friend's social media, just seeing like all these brunches, all these hangouts, like all these things people are doing and taking photos of that they have time for. Like, these people are prioritizing socializing. They're not just doing the grind, staying home, doing chores, adulting every day. But at the end of the day, you know, this friend isn't a person worth making time for. And there might be a good reason for that, but this person probably knows if that's what's happening. And if they hear, "Oh, your friend doesn't mean to leave you out, they're just busy," they know it's just a little white lie that's like, shut up, stop thinking about yourself, stop complaining and making this be a downer. Let's just accept it and move on to the next thing. It is not going to make them feel better. Here is the second thing to never say to someone who's feeling down about being rejected. And this is also one of the ones that's more well-meaning and trying to help, but just kind of missing the mark. And this is, I'm sure it wasn't planned that way. It's probably just a coincidence, you know, like these gatherings just kind of happen, like they evolve organically, and sometimes people get included and other people get left out, and you know, like I'm sure like it wasn't anything like intentional or manipulative or anything like that. I'm sure it was just unlucky. That's so much worse. Like, do you not see how that's worse? This person who was left out just gives off the wrong kind of vibe, or they're just that forgettable that no one thinks to include them, or if there's like a numbers limit and someone has to get the boot, it's them. And especially the term unlucky, you know, it usually is the same type of person that this happens to. Like, the people who are left out of one gathering are usually the kind of person who gets left out of things, because it's kind of this weird social vibe that happens. Like, some people are very memorable and they're always the life of the party, they're always included, and other people just tend to be on the fringes and they don't get included unless someone's making a special effort to do that. So the idea that there is no reason and this is just like this weird magical field of nasty vibes that just follows this person around and gloms onto them is so depressing to deal with and so disheartening. It would be almost better if there was a reason, like, oh yeah, that girl didn't invite you because like she thinks you're after her boyfriend and she's just a jealous. But if it's just like, oh yeah, like we didn't invite you, huh? Like, it's almost like you just stop existing when we don't think about it. Also, similar to phrase one, they're just busy, it can be kind of gaslighting, because sometimes there is a subtle or not so subtle reason why this person wasn't included, and it's just kind of nasty to think about. Like, maybe like in the example of the girl who's jealous about her boyfriend and doesn't want this person around, maybe that's just kind of hard to talk about and no one wants to acknowledge it. But this person who got left out might have the vibe that someone in the group is mad at them, something's off, and they're either going to feel lied to or like they can't even trust their own perceptions, which is a really awful position to be in. I don't really know what you would say to someone if the vibe's just off and it's not really anything that they've done, because I've been on both sides of that. There's people that I think are perfectly nice and I like hanging out with a little bit but wouldn't be besties with. But I think that gaslighting them about it is still kind of cruel. Number 3 is another one that's well-meaning on the surface, and now I realize that more than half of these are actually by people who are trying to be nice, but I promise you the last 2 are super mean. And this one is actually so well-meaning and it's meant to be so encouraging, but it can also really have its downsides. It can be very dangerous to tell people. And this one is, you know what? Fuck those people. People who really care about you will treat you right. And sometimes this is true. Like, almost everyone will be able to find a few people, even if it's just 1 or 2, who really do have their back. And it's hard to find them, but it is worth it to keep looking. However, this can be very out of touch with what the other person's baseline might be. A lot of these people who get rejected, they get rejected a lot. Sadly, I do think this is the kind of thing that either is part of someone's everyday common experience, or it's very rare and unusual when it happens. There isn't a lot of in between. So the people that you're talking to when you say the ones who care about you, really care, will treat you right, may have no idea what that actually looks like. For them, shallow pleasantries may be the high watermark in how they're usually treated. Like, it might be friendly, casual acquaintance, shallow pleasantries, completely ignored, treated with vague contempt, and then a lot of treated with vague contempt and treated with outright contempt, yelled at, insulted, treated like an idiot. Like, their baseline may be this horrible miasma of nastiness. So when they hear people who care about you, they may be thinking like friendly, casual acquaintance, because to them that looks really good. They may be so used to people just kind of looking at them and their eyes drifting over, or looking at them doing like this and looking away, people just not wanting to interact with them, that I mean, it sounds mean, but there are just normal, nice people who tend to get overlooked like this. That when someone's actually friendly in a casual way, they don't know that this person doesn't actually want to be friends with them. So telling them people who really care about you will treat you right without specifying what really care about you looks like specifically in action is going to set them up for failure, because they'll think, oh, okay, like this person in my class had a nice friendly conversation with me and we exchanged Instagram handles. Maybe if I ask this person to just hang out and study with me and they say yes, they'll show up. When like, no, that person never wants to talk to you again. They were like faking it to get through that conversation because they didn't want to be mean to someone they're in a class with. And they may like now completely shut you out. Also, if this person does have like some fairly consistent friendships, some pretty okay relationships with family members, hearing people who care about you will treat you right may still set them up for failure, because when those people mistreat them, they may feel empowered to call those people out on it. They may say to a friend, hey, like the last 5 times we've scheduled time to hang out, you just haven't shown up, or you've texted 5 minutes before and said you couldn't do it, without really telling me why. What's up with that? I feel kind of bad about it. And then they may phrase it in a very neutral way like that, and then this friend, who may be one of the few people who does really like them, will be like, dude, do you know all the things I'm dealing with? I've been dealing with this horrible thing, and that horrible thing, and that horrible thing, and that horrible thing, and that horrible thing. And I haven't told you because I don't want to put pressure on you, and that, like, we're not even that close. And I've just been so busy dealing with it. Like, how I have this mountain of awful things that have been happening to me, and you're over here bitching that I don't like have time to have lunch with you every 2 weeks. I can't deal with this whiny person in my life. Bye. Sadly, asking to be treated better, in my experience, is very rarely worth it. I think I would probably only say that to a partner. I would only say, hey, I feel like you're neglecting me a bit. I can't see saying that to basically anyone that I'm not fucking. I mean, maybe it's just because we're in a very heteronormative society and people get that maybe the person they're fucking, they should kind of make time for. Otherwise, I just don't think I could advise someone to ask for better treatment in that way, like however you want to phrase it. I don't think that it'll go over well with a family member, certainly not an older family member, because, oh boy, like, younger generation does not call out the older generation. They're not going to take to it. Just, take what you can get from older family members. Whatever they're good at, just accept it and don't expect anything different. And definitely not from friends, because friends are just like, you only have to stand them if they're working for you. And if you want to put in the extra effort to be nice to the other person and really be there for them and put yourself out for them, that's great. But if you're not getting that energy back, you cannot make it come. You cannot ask for it. They're either going to give it or they're not. And I'm sure there are times where people have called out their friends or siblings or family members, and it has worked and it has served them. But I feel that for someone who is already dealing with rejection, who doesn't want to lose these few friendships they have, it will not serve them. Just don't take that risk. Stay there, kind of hover in the background, and don't expect them to suddenly change. All right, on to the mean ones. Phrase number 4, and this is one of the most chronically online phrases, is no one owes you anything. Okay, well, I mean, like, I can't imagine anyone I know actually saying this, but if you're the person who's hearing it, it's probably as good an indicator as any that the person talking to you is just kind of a jerk. I do feel like the people who say this social, well, no one owes you anything. I don't have to be all nice to boring people I don't like. I can just hang with cool people. People who say this say it because they never think they'll have to rely on courtesy or fairness or basic social expectations. They're sure that no matter what situation they're in, they're going to be the hot commodity. These kinds of people get angry at the idea that someone they consider their inferior wants to be treated with a basic level of decency because they consider that person just so beneath them. Like, even asking for decency is a stretch for you. It's you, like, being uppity for your station. So for number 5, I actually kind of lied because I realized that this is an incredibly mean, dismissive thing to say, but I also think I've heard well-meaning people say this too. And that is, well, you can't expect everyone to like you. You can't expect everyone to want to be your friend all the time. The world just doesn't work that way. And when I hear this, my reaction is always, come here, come here. When did they say that? When? Wait, show me. Show me the receipts. Rewind the video. At what point did that person that you're scolding in this patronizing tone ever say that they literally think everyone they've seen, come into contact with in their life, the 8 billion people on the globe, including people in other countries, including people who do not speak their language, including the people on Sentinel Island who shoot foreigners on sight. At what point did anyone say to you, I just expect to be adored when I walk out my door? No one says that. No one. No one. You know that that's not what the other person is saying. You know perfectly well that whoever you're saying this to is talking about either one specific friend or one specific group of people that they would like to have a warmer relationship with and they feel rejected by. But it's so much easier to act like this whiny, complainy person just has such high standards. Isn't that easier than engaging with what this person is actually saying? Then maybe acknowledging, like, oh yeah, like if that was me, like if this was me being rejected by my friend of the last 10 years who, like, I did all this stuff for, who did all this stuff for me, and now I'm being ghosted and I don't know why, like that would be really sucky, and I'm kind of scared and uncomfortable thinking that that could happen. If anything, this especially makes me angry because people who complain about being rejected, generally they are rejected a lot. They are very aware that people may not like them. This is what they assume going into most situations, that they will be tolerated at best. If someone's friendly, like that's an especially good day. If someone actually becomes a friend, that is a rare prize that they will cherish. These people are not stupid, and they probably have so much more experience with rejection than the nitwit giving them this absolute bullshit advice. Because, like, I think, you know, there are popular, charismatic people who don't experience a lot of rejection, and then there's some awkward weirdos who experience a lot. And people who have been on one side usually do not have experience being on the other side. And that doesn't necessarily make them bad people. They just shouldn't be assuming that their experience over here, where they get a lot of casual friendliness and a goodish number of friends and some really close friends, is what the people are experiencing over here when they're complaining about being rejected. Because they might be awkward weirdos, but they are not that fucking stupid. What it really reminds me of is when someone who's fat complains, oh man, you know, I really would like to lose a few pounds, but even though I've been trying to live healthy, the weight just hasn't been coming off, and it's kind of disheartening. And then skinny people who have always been skinny will hear that and be like, well, you can't just sit on the sofa all day eating chips and candy and drinking soda and expect the pounds to magically fall off. It doesn't work that way. It's so much easier to assume that they're not doing the bare minimum to help themselves, and they're expecting completely unrealistic things. Because then you don't have to feel bad for them going through something that's genuinely hard. And again, with the analogy for romantic relationships, I think we all get why, if your friend's going through a breakup and she's sitting on the couch and eating junk food, why you shouldn't be like, oh, there, you know, not everyone is gonna fall in love with you and just love you all the time and want to fuck you and think you're the hottest shit ever. You know, it just doesn't work that way. Like, I hope if you've said that to anyone, they just smack you in the face, because why would you say that? Hey, this is editing stuff. I guess I noticed watching back that a lot of my advice really boiled down to acknowledging that some people get along with basically everyone. Some people are not everyone's cup of tea. And it's kind of just, if you're someone who is more the first one and you're trying to give advice to someone who maybe is more the second one, just kind of acknowledge that what they're talking about is probably neither a benign little oopsie misunderstanding that doesn't even matter, or something that they've caused by being a sucky person. Listen to what they have to say and kind of assume that if they're talking about it to you, it's not like a nothing to them. And I mean, unless you think they're a jerk, hopefully they didn't cause it by their misbehavior either. Okay, so those were all the things not to say to people. So what should you say instead? First, I think it's always helpful to just say, that's rough, buddy. I'm sorry you went through that. That sounds really nasty. I don't know what that person was thinking. Yeah, that sucks. That was really hurtful. And I don't know if the other person meant it that way, or like if they were just thoughtless, but I'm sorry that happened. And you don't have to listen to someone bitch and moan and complain forever. After a bit, you can tell them, like, okay, look, this is a lot of negativity, but you're gonna feel better if you get your mind off of it, so let's do something fun. You're allowed to shut that down. But I mean, just don't tell them that they're misreading things, or it didn't happen, or they deserve it, or their expectations for basic decency are unrealistic. You know, they're the expert on their life, and you don't have to be their captive ear forever, but you can change the subject without undermining what they're going through. And if you know this person pretty well and you know where their social skills are lacking, you can give them practical advice. Like, if whenever they finally get invited to something, they get too hyped up and they start yakking and they just talk everyone's ear off, then you could say, look, when you're excited, you're bouncy and fun to be around, but you can also chatter. You can also get too hyper. So, you know, time yourself. Like, look at your watch. If you've been talking for a minute and no one else has gotten to talk, give someone else a chance to talk. Like, if this is what, like, you've actually noticed is going on with that person. Like only if like this particular thing is what happens, is what's happening. Obviously, don't give that advice to someone that's more on the quiet side. That would be really mean. So there's very specific things that you can point to, and your relationship with this person is very solid, and they're not a parent because they will not take your advice. You're kind of stuck in that case. Then giving them some actually helpful and concrete social pointers can also be a good thing to do. But I think mostly lend a listening ear, believe them when they're talking about their own life, and occasionally get their mind off of it. It's probably the best thing that you can do. Honestly, I think if you care about people who are experiencing social rejection and you do want to help them, then you're ahead of, I think, 99% of people, because I believe, especially with friendships, especially with group settings like work settings, clubs, school, people just kind of don't care. They think that if you're kind of a loner and weird and awkward, it's probably because you're doing something wrong and you deserve it. And if you were something, you would be able to make friends easily. And I just don't think that's true. I think that, you know, it's kind of this weird vibe distribution, and some people just vibe well with basically everyone, and some people just don't do that naturally very much. But I think that all humans deserve compassion, and like the only thing that deserves scorn is punching down, kicking people who are already down, not believing people, being jerks to people for no reason. So that was quite a ramble, but I think, you know, we're all trying to learn how to be better and how to be better friends. And maybe if this could help someone or steer them towards something better or away from some harmful stereotypes, then I hope it was useful information. Bye! Thanks for watching!